Hello friends, you would recall that in our last session that we had just before the summer break, we were in middle of discussion on different types of communication. This is the first topic in the second unit, and we had discussed the various types of communication. I would advise you to again go through the same video lecture so as to retain the memory of whatever concepts we had discussed, right? So in that particular session we discussed the different types of communication. We talked about how communication can be further categorized into non-verbal and verbal, and how non-verbal communication can further be categorized into non-written and written. We talked about paralanguages and body languages. Then we talked about how verbal communication is also further divided into written and oral communication. I would hope that you are able to recall what we had discussed in the last session. Therein I had told you that verbal communication is making use of some language, right? And if you are not using any language, then it is categorized as non-verbal communication. Now today what we are going to do in this particular session is we are going to discuss verbal communication, that is communicating using language. In more detail, we are going to talk about the two types of verbal communication, oral as well as written, and we are going to do a comparative analysis. Now oral communication, let's have a look at some of the features of oral communication. I hope you remember that we have already discussed this in your first semester in English language and communication skills also. So we are only going to build up on the concepts that we have discussed there. So oral communication is faster. It does not take much time. You don't have to plan, and it's faster, and that is why if in case there is an emergency, you make use of oral communication. Supposing there is a fire which has broken out in your house, you will make use of oral communication to alert other members of the family, right? Again, it is supported by body language or paralanguage. We are yet to discuss body language and paralanguage in detail. We'll be doing that in the forthcoming sessions, but just to let you know, I'll make use of an example. Now suppose you are talking to your friend, right? The friend does not only listen to what you are saying, but he also observes your body language, what gestures you are making, what is your posture, right? And this will give him additional cues, and this will make it easier for him to understand what you are trying to convey to him, right? And that is why we are saying it is supported by body language. Now, what is paralanguage? Now, if you are talking to somebody on phone, so naturally the other party, the other person, the receiver, does not observe you, and he does not have any access to your body language. But then, he can pay attention to your paralanguage. Now, what do we mean by paralanguage? See, paralanguage means the tone, the pitch of the voice. Okay. You understand the difference between the two okays? The pitch was different, right? The accent, you must have observed that the people from America, they have a different accent, and people from countries like Argentina have a different accent, while people from India and Pakistan, they have a different accent. So this again is a part of paralanguage, right? So we'll be discussing paralanguage in detail. So this was just to give you an idea of what paralanguage is. So even if the oral communication is taking place over phone and the receiver does not have any access to the body language of the sender, he can still make out what the sender is trying to communicate by paying attention to the sender's paralanguage, to his accent, to his pitch, to how fast or slow is he talking, right? Again, please understand that oral communication is beneficial in one sense. It is easier for the sender to understand what is the feedback of the receiver, what is the response of the receiver to the message conveyed by him. So let's say if you are talking to your friend and you are proposing to your friend to go on a holiday, or to maybe go on a party, to go on a picnic tour, right? Now the sender, which is in this particular case, you are the sender, so you have access to the response of the receiver. How does the receiver respond to this message of mine? You get instant access to the receiver's response, and since you understand what his response is, you can accordingly adjust, customize your message. I'll give another example. The teacher comes to the class, he is the center of the information, and he tells the class, okay friends, today we are going to discuss this particular topic. And the receivers, the students in the class, they say no, or they start making faces. This is an instant feedback for the center of the information, for the teacher, that the students are in no mood to study today. Now he can further do what? He can further customize his message based on the feedback that he has received from the customer. So what he'll say next? Okay, I'm not going to teach you for the next 45 minutes. I'm only going to teach you 15 minutes, and then we'll go out and play a game. Because you understand, the teacher has said this because now when he initially told the students that they are going to discuss a particular topic, the students responded in a very negative fashion. So just to create an enthusiasm in the class, he said, okay, we'll be only discussing the topic for 15 minutes. Remaining time we are going to spend on playing some game. Is that okay? So this is how the center of the communication can customize his message, because he has access to instant feedback from the receiver. Again, now this particular point I have shown in red. What does red mean? What does red convey here? Red conveys that this is a problem with the oral communication. Green means these are positive aspects of oral communication. This is a negative aspect, and that negative aspect is that the message may get corrupted. What do we mean by this? I tell a student in your batch something, then he tells it to other students in the class. It may so happen that the message that I've communicated to him may get corrupted in between. Why? I hope you remember our discussion on selective attention retention, right? So it may so happen that the other students in the class, they are not able to understand, or they do not fully understand what the teacher wanted them to understand, or what the teacher wanted to convey to them. So let me repeat myself. Let's say that I, as a teacher, tell the CR something, and the CR has to tell the same thing to the other students. It may so happen that since I've communicated to him orally, he may not recall and he may not be able to remember all the things that I had told him. So he may not be able to communicate all the things that I told him to the other members in the class, and so there might be a corruption in the message. The message may get corrupted, right? On the other hand, this does not happen with written communication. Let's discuss written communication. First things, there is a record created in record communication. What somebody has said verbally, orally, you would not be able to create a record for that. You do not have any record for future reference. You cannot find out what somebody had said a week ago. But on the other hand, in case of written communication, you have a record created. And that is why in organizations, many times, when some crucial decision making is done, the records are created. The records have to be created, and so they rely on written communication. Then please understand, since written communication generally has to be planned, because you cannot change the message and the record is getting created. So if you say something which is not appropriate, it will enter the records, and anybody can refer to what you had said by looking at those records. So you have to be very, very appropriate when you are communicating in using written communication, right? And that is why it requires planning. And since it requires planning, it is not as fast as oral communication. Again, since you are planning, then it is possible for you to be more accurate, right? So take example of when you are making an assignment. You would most likely be relatively more accurate than when you are making a presentation. Fine. So in written communication, high accuracy is possible because you are planning in your written communication also. And you are planning because you know that record is going to be created. If I say something which is not correct, which is factually wrong, it may also get recorded, right? So you plan your written communication, that is why high accuracy is possible. Then please also understand, because this happens, the message won't get distorted. So if I send across an SMS or a message on WhatsApp, a written message on WhatsApp to the CR, he can communicate the same message to you, and there would be no distortion of the message. There would be no instances of the message getting corrupted, which happened in the case of oral communication, right? However, since you have to plan and then you have to draft the written communication, you have to plan it, it's going to take a lot of time, and since time is money, it's going to be costly for you also, right? I'll give you another example. If you have to tell your friend how was today's class verbally, you are not going to plan it. Orally, you are not going to plan it, and you are going to tell him straight away. It's not going to cost you any time or money. On the other hand, if you have to communicate the same idea in form of a letter, right, or maybe as a WhatsApp message, you are going to plan it well. It's going to be costly for you in the sense that it will consume more of your time, right? So these are the differences between verbal communication and between the various types of verbal communication. Please understand that whenever there is a need to create record, generally we rely on written communication in organizations also. Fine. Now let's have a look at some of the examples of oral communication. Now, a leader addressing the followers, a meeting taking place. You can see this particular photograph showing a meeting taking place or some committee trying to decide on a particular issue. Then you see an interview taking place. There are 3 interviewers and one interviewee. Then we have this informal chat taking place near the coffee machine, and this generally happens in organizations when you have an informal chat with your colleagues during the lunch break or the coffee break, and this is what's happening here. And now again, some alarm has to be raised. Generally you rely on oral communication. On the other hand, written communication, have a look. What is this? You know already. You have been drafting these kind of written communication since your class 10. This is an application, right? This is a memorandum. We'll be discussing them in the forthcoming units. This is a tender notice. We'll again be discussing this in the forthcoming sessions. Then this is an advertisement, a print advertisement, right? And this is a report. So these are all instances of written communication. We'll be discussing most of them, except for report, which we've already discussed in the first semester. Report writing, technical report writing. The remaining things we'll be discussing in the forthcoming sessions. Thank you very much for your time.